She only came back because she thinks there's something here worth taking. My Uncle Curtis said it beside my grandmother's casket. He did not whisper. Curtis had never believed in wasting a sentence on only one person when a room was available. The funeral home's reception parlor held 32 relatives, 4 trays of untouched sandwiches, 1 retired fire chief, and a lawyer carrying a leather folder against her ribs. Every one of them heard him. I was near the coat rack, helping my cousin's 8-year-old daughter out of a wool cardigan she had buttoned wrong. The heat had come on too high after we returned from the cemetery. Everyone complained about it. I had already located the 2 exits and checked that neither was blocked by flower stands. Old habits do not ask whether the danger is real. The little girl shivered when someone opened the front entrance. I took off my black jacket and placed it around her shoulders. That was all it took. The neckline of my dress shifted against my left shoulder. 3 inches of grafted skin showed above the fabric, including the upper edge of a crooked rectangle near my shoulder blade. A man across the room stopped speaking. Chief Owen Briggs had been holding a small wooden box while Curtis told him some story about the old fire. Briggs was 62 now, silver at the temples, and still carried himself like every room might eventually need an incident commander. His eyes fixed on my back. Not on my face. Not at first. He set the box down. "Canyon 7, he asked. The words reached a part of me that had never learned the year. 3 civilians out, I answered. 1 missing. The room changed before anyone understood why. Chief Briggs stepped toward me. Who was missing? I looked at my grandmother's closed casket. Rosa Torres. Northwest bedroom. Behind him, Curtis stopped smiling. My name is Elena Torres. Most people call me Lena. I was 38 when my grandmother died, and until that afternoon, my family had spent 12 years believing my uncle rescued us from the Canyon 7 fire. I had spent 12 years letting them. 3 days earlier, I had driven south from Colorado Springs with 1 suitcase, a folded black dress, and no intention of discussing property. The highway narrowed after Pueblo. Farther west, the land still carried the fire if you knew where to look. New pine grew along the slopes, but black trunks remained among them, too dead to bend and too rooted to fall. Every few miles, a new evacuation route sign pointed toward a road that had not existed when I was 26. I noticed all of them. After the Army National Guard, I took a job helping counties and hospitals build emergency evacuation plans. Most days involved spreadsheets, floor plans, generator tests, and explaining that a locked side door was not an emergency exit simply because a map said it was. My family described it as consulting. Curtis described it as moving around again. I had not corrected him. At 26, I was a staff sergeant and combat medic in the Colorado Army National Guard. When the fire crossed the western fence, a volunteer engine stopped at our gate long enough for me to identify myself as a medic. 1 firefighter handed me a yellow county radio before the crew moved toward the next property. No one wrote down my name. The road into Arroyo Ridge curved around the old burn scar before dropping toward town. 12 years had passed, but my hands still tightened at the first view of the ridge. I loosened them deliberately and kept driving. Grandma Rosa's house stood 4 miles beyond town on land our family had owned in pieces for almost a century. The original house had burned. The replacement was smaller, built on the same stone foundation with a metal roof and a wheelchair ramp, Curtis added when Grandma's knees began failing. He had done good work on that ramp. That matters. Curtis had stayed. He drove Grandma to appointments, labeled her prescriptions, repaired frozen pipes, and brought groceries when the county road disappeared under snow. He also let the town call him the man who carried 4 people out of a burning house. Both facts fit inside the same person. That was the difficulty. When I arrived, Curtis was on the porch directing 2 workers from his excavation company as they moved folding tables into the yard. "You're late," he said. "The service is Friday." "There's more to a funeral than the service." He looked at my suitcase as though measuring how long I intended to occupy space. "You staying here?" "For now." His mouth tightened. Grandma had kept my childhood room after the rebuild. Curtis called it unnecessary. She called it prepared. Inside, the house smelled like furniture polish, coffee, and the lavender powder Grandma used after her bath. Her cane leaned beside the recliner. A half-finished crossword remained on the end table, one answer written in the block letters she used when her hands shook. Curtis came in behind me carrying paper plates. "Mara Singh will be at the funeral home after the burial," he said. "We should settle the property while everyone's together." Mara was Grandma's attorney. "I'm not discussing the property at her funeral. It's paperwork, Lena. Not a seance." He pulled a thick envelope from inside his jacket. My name was typed on the front. "I had copies prepared," he said. "The family keeps the land together, you sign off, and nobody spends 6 months fighting." "I'm not fighting anyone." "Good," he held the envelope toward me. I took it because refusing would have created the scene he already expected me to create. Curtis smiled, satisfied. That was the first thing he misunderstood. The second was believing I had come home for something he could put in an envelope. The envelope stayed unopened on the dresser for 2 days. Curtis asked about it 3 times. The first time was Thursday morning while he answered calls from relatives who had forgotten the service time. "Those papers are straightforward," he said, covering the phone. "So is waiting until after the funeral." The second time, he found me clearing pine needles around the propane tank. "You do this everywhere you go?" "Only places that can burn." The original house had cedar siding. The replacement had a metal roof and bare gravel around the foundation. Curtis chose both. "You know I rebuilt this place," he said. "I know, I paid crews when insurance stalled. I handled permits. I dealt with the county. I know that too." He waited for the sentence he thought should follow. It did not. The third time was Friday, 20 minutes before the procession left for the cemetery. He stood in my doorway wearing a dark suit that fit too tightly across his shoulders. "Mara needs an answer today. Mara has not asked me a question. She represents the estate. Then she knows how to reach me." His jaw shifted. Curtis did that when someone placed a fact where he had planned to put pressure. "You have not been here, Lena." "No, your grandmother needed people who were here. She had you." "That is exactly my point." He walked away before I could ask what he believed the point entitled him to. At the funeral home, Curtis arranged grief the way he arranged job sites. He moved Aunt Pilar to the second row because she coughed. He told Noah to stand near the guest book. He corrected the florist's white roses. When the director asked who would speak, Curtis answered before anyone else looked up. "I will," he gave a good eulogy. He spoke about Grandma teaching him to drive an old Ford on the pasture road. He described the peppermints she kept in every coat pocket. He made people laugh once and cry twice. He did not mention the fire until the final minute. Then he rested both hands on the lectern. "Most of us get one life from our parents," he said. "Some of us are lucky enough to give one back." Heads turned toward him with familiar admiration. Behind the last row, Chief Briggs held a wooden box against his chest. Inside was the brass house number recovered from the ruins 12 years earlier, 418, blackened around the edges but readable. He had brought it with a thin memorial file from the volunteer department. After the service, Curtis greeted him like a fellow member of a club. "Chief," he said, gripping his hand. "You did not have to bring that. Rosa asked me to keep it until the house felt finished." Curtis glanced toward the casket. "She always said you arrived just in time." Briggs studied him. "We arrived when we arrived." Curtis laughed as if that were modesty. By the time we returned from the cemetery, the reception room had filled with heat and the smell of coffee. Mara Singh stood near the windows with 2 of my cousins. She had iron gray hair, low heels, and the expression of someone who had watched families turn words like house and land into accusations. Curtis began before she could call anyone together. He tapped a spoon against a glass. "We can save everyone another trip if we handle a few practical matters now." "This is not the scheduled estate meeting," Mara said. "The family is present. The beneficiaries have not received the documents. I prepared summaries." He lifted several envelopes identical to mine and passed them around like programs. One cousin opened his. "Why does the proposed sale name Torres Excavation as the buyer?" "Because selling outside the family would be foolish," Curtis said. "I can keep the land together and pay everyone fairly." Mara opened her folder. "No sale has been authorized." Not yet. Then Aunt Pilar asked the question Curtis had been waiting for. What does Lena want? He looked across the room at me. I saw the decision arrive. If he answered normally, I became a beneficiary with an opinion. If he answered loudly, I became a threat the family could dismiss. He chose loudly. She only came back because she thinks there is something here worth taking. Nobody moved. Curtis continued. She disappeared after the fire. She did not sit through the surgeries. She did not manage the medication, the roof, or the winters. Now she shows up with a suitcase and we are supposed to pretend she gets an equal voice. Noah looked down. Aunt Pilar studied the floor. Curtis mistook discomfort for agreement. She has always been good at leaving before the work starts. That sentence made me turn toward him. Before I could answer, the front door opened and cold air crossed the room. Little Sophia, still damp-eyed from the cemetery, shivered beside me. I removed my jacket and placed it around her shoulders. The neckline of my dress shifted. Across the room, Chief Briggs stopped speaking. His gaze went to the damaged skin above my left shoulder, then to the crooked rectangular scar near my back. The color left his face. He placed the wooden box on the nearest table with both hands. Canyon 7, he asked. The room had not gone silent yet. But it was about to. 3 civilians out, I said. 1 missing. Chief Briggs did not move closer until I faced him fully. Who was missing? Rosa Torres. Northwest bedroom. He looked past me toward the casket, then back to the scar above my dress. Your name? Elena Torres. Service. Army National Guard. Combat medic then. A spoon struck a saucer somewhere behind us. Nobody bent to pick it up. Curtis stepped between us by half a pace. Chief, Lena was in the Guard, but she was not with your department. There were a lot of people moving around that night. Briggs kept his eyes on me. What was the first evacuation report? I heard the radio again before I heard the room. 3 juveniles transferred at the south porch. 1 adult located. Structural collapse beginning on the west side. His mouth tightened. And the radio? County handheld. Yellow casing. Battery pack failed under heat. I touched the scar near my shoulder blade before I could stop myself. Chief Briggs looked at Curtis. That battery melted into someone's turnout layer. We wrote it into the medical transfer notes because the flight crew needed to know what they were cutting away. Curtis folded his arms. You are making a connection from a scar. No, Briggs said. I am verifying one. He returned to the wooden box and lifted out a thin gray file held together by a rusting clip. The brass house number remained beneath it, blackened around the edges. I brought this for Rosa's memorial, he said. I did not expect to finish an incident report. Mara Singh moved closer but did not interrupt. Briggs opened the file on the table. The first page showed a map of Grandma's property drawn in black ink: house, propane tank, county road, wind direction. Red pencil marked the point where the fire crossed the western fence. The next page was a radio log. He placed one finger beside a line written at 1943. Unknown female responder reports 3 juveniles transferred from South Porch. Another line followed 4 minutes later. Same responder re-entered structure for 1 missing adult. The room seemed to contract around the table. Curtis leaned over the document. That does not say Lena. No, Briggs said. Because she was airborne before anyone got her name. He turned another page. A photocopied transfer sheet listed burns, smoke exposure, possible shoulder fracture, and a foreign object fused to clothing near the left scapula. Beside identification, someone had written, Off-duty Army medic. Name unknown. Chief Briggs tapped the line once. We were still establishing the defensive line when she went inside. By the time I reached the porch, she had already brought the children out. She went back for Rosa before I could order anyone not to. He did not describe the rescue. He did not call me brave. He only placed the sequence where everyone could see it. Curtis stared at the page. I took the kids from her, he said. Briggs nodded. You did. I got them to the truck. You did. I drove them through the closure before the road went. Yes, Curtis seized on each answer as if it rebuilt the room. Then do not stand here acting like I did nothing. I am not. Briggs closed the file halfway. I am saying you were outside. The sentence landed harder than an accusation. Noah had been standing near the guest book since the service ended. At 26, he was taller than Curtis, but in that moment he looked 14 again. He came toward me slowly. Did you make somebody count? He asked. Curtis turned. Noah, not now. Noah ignored him. In the kitchen, he said to me. Did you make somebody count the floorboards? I looked at him. 12 boards from the pantry to the back door. His face changed. Until then, the fire had been a collection of images other people gave him. Curtis carrying him, the photograph in the newspaper, flames behind the roofline. Now something older moved underneath those images. You told me not to look up, he said. The smoke was lower than it should have been. You put my hand through your belt. I needed both of mine. I kept losing the number. You started again. His breathing turned uneven. I lowered my voice automatically. What number are you on now? Noah swallowed. 12, good. He looked at my face for a long time. I never saw you. No, but I heard you. Behind him, Curtis said everyone was shouting that night. Noah turned toward him. She made me count. That was all he said. It was enough. Chief Briggs opened the file again and removed a newspaper clipping protected inside a plastic sleeve. The photograph showed Curtis carrying Noah across the county road. Smoke filled the sky behind them. Curtis's face was black with soot and Noah had both arms around his neck. The caption read, Local man saves family as canyon fire destroys Torres home. Briggs placed the clipping beside the radio log. This photograph was taken after the transfer, he said. It shows what happened outside. The report shows what happened before it. Curtis looked at the 2 pages as if one of them had betrayed him. Aunt Pilar whispered, We thought you went in. Curtis did not answer her. He looked at me instead. For the first time since I had returned, he was not measuring what I wanted. He was measuring what I knew. And I understood Curtis had not accepted a flattering mistake. He had carried it, polished it, and placed it where the family could see. The question was no longer whether the story was wrong, but how deliberately it had been kept. Curtis recovered first. He had always been good at finding solid ground inside a bad moment. Yes, Lena went inside, he said. Nobody is denying that now. But I was there too. I took the children from her. I got Rosa into the truck. I stayed after the fire, after the cameras, after everyone else went back to their lives. He looked around the room, choosing faces one by one. I rebuilt the house. I drove my mother to every appointment. I changed dressings when she could not reach them. One night does not erase 12 years. Some people nodded because parts of that were true. That was Curtis's best defense. He had never built his version entirely from lies. He used enough truth to make the missing pieces look unnecessary. I closed the gray incident file. I did not leave the fire, Curtis, I said. I left the hospital. He stared at me. The sentence did not answer everything, but it stopped him from answering for me. I handed the file back to Chief Briggs and walked outside. Cold air met me on the funeral home steps. The cemetery lay beyond the parking lot, its new dirt darker than the frozen ground around it. I counted 6 cars before Briggs came through the door behind me. He did not stand beside me. He stopped several feet away. I should have found your name, he said. You had a wildfire moving toward town. I had a report with an empty line. You had more than one empty line that night. That does not make this one better. He offered me the file. I brought a copy. Rosa asked about it years ago. I told her the unidentified responder had probably been attached to a military unit and transferred out. She knew who it was. Briggs absorbed that without surprise. Did the family? I thought they knew enough. That is not the same thing. No, I took the report. The last page ended with a sentence written in block capitals, unknown female responder transported before identification. For 12 years, my place in the official record had been an absence with a job title. The words brought back the sound before the pictures. Wind through dry grass. A propane tank venting somewhere in the dark. The radio breaking apart under overlapping voices. I had been home on leave for 4 days when Canyon 7 crossed the western ridge. The fire had started miles away, but the wind changed near sunset. Embers reached our property before the evacuation order did. I was helping Grandma Rosa load medication into a grocery bag when the electricity failed. Curtis drove into the yard in his work truck, horn sounding, shouting that the county road was closing. Then a gust pushed fire through the grass behind the barn. Everything happened at once. Noah and the two younger children ran toward the kitchen. Grandma tried to follow, caught her cane on a chair, and fell. Smoke entered through a broken window before I could reach her. Curtis pulled the children toward the back door. A burning branch struck the porch roof, and part of it came down between us. I could hear him outside, but the kitchen had filled with smoke. I took off my belt and looped Noah's hand through it. "Keep one hand here," I told him. "Count every floorboard." He asked where his sisters were. "Behind you." That was not true yet. I found them by touch, one crouched beneath the table and the other pressed against a cabinet. I connected their hands and moved them toward Noah's voice. 12 boards took us to the pantry. 3 more took us to the door. Curtis reached through the smoke and pulled the youngest child from me. Then the second. Noah stumbled onto the porch, still holding my belt. "Rosa," Curtis shouted. I turned back. He caught my wrist. "The roof is going." From the hallway came the sound of Grandma's cane striking wood. Once, then again. I pulled free. The northwest bedroom was 20 feet away. In smoke, 20 feet becomes a country. I crawled beneath the heat and followed the cane. Grandma was beside her bed, unable to stand. A window had broken above her, and sparks were landing on the quilt. I wrapped the quilt around her shoulders and dragged her into the hall. Halfway back, she stopped helping. I thought she had lost consciousness. Then she said very clearly, "The children?" "Outside." "All 3? "Yes," she moved again. We reached the kitchen as the porch roof shifted. The county radio clipped to my shoulder had been transmitting without me noticing. Someone shouted for all civilians to clear the structure. I answered that I had 1 adult at the south exit. The roof came down before we reached it. A beam struck my left shoulder and drove me against the floor. The radio battery split under the pressure. Heat spread across my back so quickly that for 1 second it felt cold. Grandma was still beneath the quilt. I could not lift the beam. I could move my right arm. So I pushed her. Curtis appeared through the opening where the door had been. He grabbed the quilt and pulled her across the porch. I pushed until her shoes disappeared outside. Then the floor changed angle beneath me. The next clear image I have is Chief Briggs kneeling near my head while 2 firefighters cut through my dress and radio harness. I kept asking whether 4 people were out. Nobody answered in a way I could keep. At the helicopter, a medic asked my name. I told her. Whether she heard it, I never knew. When I woke again, I was in a burn unit 2 states away, and Canyon 7 already belonged to the people who had remained in the photograph. I did not know then that silence would preserve more than peace. It would give Curtis room to stand in every doorway. The burn unit reduced life to measurable tasks. Raise the arm 5 degrees. Hold it, breathe through the dressing change. Eat even when food tasted like metal. Sleep before the next nurse woke me. I spent 7 weeks learning that recovery was not one decision but hundreds of small permissions given to pain. Grandma called whenever the staff allowed it. She never asked me to describe the fire. She asked whether the room had a window, whether the nurses were kind, and whether I wanted her to send the blue blanket from my childhood bed. Curtis called twice. The first time, he said the house was gone but everyone was alive. The second time, he told me a newspaper had printed a photograph of him carrying Noah across the road. They made it look like I did the whole thing, he said. I waited. He laughed once, uncomfortable. You know how papers are. That was the moment I could have corrected the story before it hardened. I did not. I was tired, medicated, and still unable to lift my left arm. More than that, Grandma had already begun asking me not to turn survival into another family argument. Curtis stayed, she said. Let him have what helps him stay. I understood the request differently then. I thought she meant gratitude. I did not know it would become ownership. By the time I returned to Arroyo Ridge 8 months later, the photograph had been framed in the volunteer fire station. Curtis had spoken at 2 preparedness meetings. People bought him drinks at the VFW, even though he had never served. When someone called him the man who saved the Torres family, he stopped saying the newspaper had exaggerated. Later he began adding details. He said he had crawled through the kitchen. He said he carried Rosa from the bedroom. He said I had panicked after the children were outside and left with the first ambulance. Each addition was small enough to pass unnoticed. Together they built a version in which Curtis occupied every useful position, and I existed only as the relative who disappeared afterward. I returned to duty after rehabilitation. Then deployments, transfers, and work kept me away. Grandma and I spoke every Sunday. Curtis handled everything local. That was how 12 years passed. The night after the funeral, I slept in my childhood room and woke before dawn. Grandma's house was quiet in the way a recently emptied place is quiet. Not peaceful. Expectant. I walked through it without turning on the lights. Curtis's work was everywhere. He had installed grab bars in the bathroom, widened the hallway for Grandma's walker, and replaced the back steps with a ramp pitched correctly for winter ice. The furnace filter had been changed the month before she died. Her medications were sorted inside a cabinet labeled by day. I did not need to diminish what he had done in order to name what he had taken. In the hallway hung the newspaper photograph. Curtis carried Noah beneath a sky black with smoke. The frame was polished. The glass had no dust. I lifted it from the wall. Behind the cardboard backing, written in Grandma's uneven block letters, were 7 words. This is not the whole picture. I sat on the floor with the frame across my knees. Grandma had known. Not just what happened in the fire. She knew what the photograph had become. The estate meeting began at 10 the next morning in Mara Singh's office above the pharmacy. Curtis arrived with a yellow legal pad and 3 property maps. He had already marked a proposed access road in red. Mara waited until everyone sat down. Rosa's instructions are specific, she said. No beneficiary is required to sell, transfer, or waive an interest today. Curtis placed his pen on the pad. Nobody is being pressured. Mara looked at the envelopes he had distributed at the funeral. Then those documents can be disregarded. She began with personal items and savings. Grandma left jewelry to Pilar, tools to Noah, and smaller cash gifts to the grandchildren. Then Mara opened the property schedule. The workshop parcel and 6 surrounding acres transferred to Curtis Torres. Curtis relaxed. It was the land where Torres Excavation already stored equipment. The residence and 12 acres bordering County Route 9 transferred to Elena Torres. His pen stopped. Mara continued. Remaining pasture is divided among the other named beneficiaries. Any sale between family members requires independent appraisal and separate counsel. Curtis leaned forward. That road frontage is part of the business parcel. No, Mara said. It is part of the residence parcel. We have used that entrance for 15 years. By Rosa's permission. I improved it. That does not alter title. He turned to me. You do not even live here. I thought of the envelope, the unpriced sale agreement, and the red access line on his map. Until that moment, I had believed Curtis wanted the house, because he thought caring for Grandma had earned it. Now I understood he needed the land for something he had already begun planning. Mara reached for a small recorder. Rosa left a statement concerning this division. Curtis looked at the machine as though the dead had been given another vote. No one moved. Outside, a truck idled while someone rolled cylinders into the pharmacy below. Ordinary work continued beneath us. Curtis closed his legal pad, then opened it again. Noah stared at the road on the map. I kept my hands flat on my knees, waiting to hear what Grandma had chosen to say when none of us could interrupt. Mara pressed play. Grandma's breathing filled the office before her voice did. Rosa's voice came through thin and uneven. If Mara is playing this, then Curtis is probably angry, Lena is probably quiet, and everyone else is pretending not to look at either one. A few people smiled. Curtis did not. I asked both of you for more than I should have, Grandma continued. Curtis, I asked you to stay. Lena, I asked you not to correct me when keeping the peace became easier than telling the truth. One of you carried the daily work. One of you carried me out before there could be any daily work left to do. The recorder clicked as she took a breath. Curtis cared for me. That is true. Lena saved my life. That is also true. Neither truth cancels the other, and neither gives one person the right to own the whole story. Curtis shifted in his chair. Grandma's voice weakened, then returned. The workshop goes to Curtis because he built his business there, and because I know what he gave up to remain close. The house and road parcel go to Lena because the house stands on the life she gave back to me, and because I will not let land become payment for silence. I was wrong to ask for that silence. I thought I was preventing a fight. I was only delaying one until the wrong story had furniture in every room. Mara glanced at me. Grandma finished simply. One person cared for me afterward. One person got me out before afterward existed. I lived because of both. The house is not a prize for whoever tells the better version. The recording ended with the scrape of a cup and Grandma saying off microphone that the tea had gone cold. No final blessing. No music, no perfect last sentence. Just Rosa Torres noticing her tea. Mara stopped the recorder. Curtis stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. She made that recording when? 6 weeks before her death, Mara said. Was she competent? I would not have recorded it otherwise. You influenced her. No, Lena did. I had not known the recording existed. Mara closed the recorder. Elena had no contact with me regarding this estate before Rosa died. Curtis looked at me anyway. He needed my hand somewhere near the machinery of what had happened. If I had planned it, he could oppose me. If Grandma had acted alone, then he had to accept she had watched him and decided limits were necessary. He gathered his maps. This is not finished. The estate division is, Mara said. He left without the legal pad. Noah handed it to me. Across the top page Curtis had written, Expansion Phase 2. Below it was a cost estimate, a bank deadline, and a projected start date 4 months away. The red access road crossed my new parcel before reaching County Route 9. Mara saw what I was reading. Do not sign anything today, she said. I was not planning to. Good, grief makes people mistake urgency for obligation. That afternoon Curtis called and asked to meet at the workshop. Torres excavation occupied a gravel yard behind the house, crowded with loaders, trailers, fuel tanks, and stacks of drainage pipe. 6 men worked there. I knew most by name. They had families, car payments, and no part in our argument. Curtis waited inside his office with 2 coffees and a property appraisal. He pushed 1 cup toward me. I had this done last month. The appraisal valued the house and 12 acres well below sales along the county road. Who hired the appraiser? I asked. I did. Who told him the land would remain agricultural? Curtis said nothing. County Route 9 was scheduled for improvement. Commercial frontage would be worth far more once the work was complete. He unrolled a map. My current entrance cannot handle the new trucks. The grade is wrong, and winter runoff keeps washing the shoulder out. Your parcel gives me a direct route. Grandma's parcel. Yours now. You planned this before she died. I planned for the business to survive. He pointed to the map. The bank approved equipment financing based on this expansion. I have contracts waiting. If the road does not go through, I lose the loan terms and the contracts. And you assumed she would leave you the land. I assumed the person who stayed would not be punished for staying. There it was again, care turned into a bill everyone else was expected to pay. I am not punishing you. Then sell it to me. At an independent value? His expression hardened. At a family value. I folded the appraisal. You told the family I came back to take something. You had already prepared papers to take this before I arrived. That land does nothing for you. You do not know what it will do. I know you live 300 miles away. And I know you made promises using property you did not own. Curtis leaned back. Neither of us spoke. Then he said, quieter, I have 22 days before the bank reviews the file. It was the first honest deadline he had given me. I stood and left the coffee untouched. Outside, one operator guided a loader between 2 trucks. Curtis had built something real there. Employees depended on it. That did not make the road his. It only made my decision harder. I spent the next 6 days learning what 12 acres could become when nobody treated them as an extension of Curtis's plans. Mara gave me the county records. Chief Briggs gave me the contact for a regional wildfire recovery group. A planner from La Plata County showed me the pending road improvements and confirmed what Curtis had left out of his appraisal. Once County Route 9 was widened, the frontage would be worth nearly twice what he had offered. I also learned Arroyo Ridge had no temporary housing program for families displaced by wildfire. The nearest option was 70 miles away. That mattered more to me than the price. I walked the property every morning. The house sat on high ground. The well had been rebuilt after Canyon 7. There was enough space for storage containers, 2 small cabins, and a turnaround for emergency vehicles without crossing the workshop yard. For the first time since the funeral, I could see the land without Curtis's red line running through it. On the 7th day, I met with a nonprofit called Front Range Recovery Housing. They supported families after fires, floods, and mandatory evacuations. Their director did not ask about my scar. She asked about insurance, road access, septic capacity, and whether the county would permit temporary occupancy. Those were questions I trusted. By the end of the meeting, we had a plan. I would keep ownership of the house and lease it to the nonprofit for $1 a year. They would maintain it, fund 2 small guest cabins, and keep the property ready for displaced families. The road frontage would enter a conservation easement restricting commercial truck access. Emergency vehicles, residents, and agricultural use would remain permitted. Curtis's expansion road would not. I called him before Mara filed anything. He arrived at the house in his work truck and left the engine running. "You made a decision," he said. "Yes," I explained the lease first. Then the easement. He listened without interrupting until I said commercial access would be prohibited. "You are shutting down my expansion. I am stopping a road across land you do not own." Same result. "No, your company still exists. Your current entrance still exists. You have to redesign the expansion you announced before you had permission." He walked toward the porch, then turned back. "You think giving the house away makes you better than me? I am not giving it away. $1 a year. I keep the property. They keep it useful. To strangers. To families who have nowhere to go after a fire." His face changed at that. Not guilt. Recognition. He looked past me toward the west slope where the old house had burned. "You planned this to make a point. I planned it after you told me the land did nothing for me. You are punishing 6 employees because you are angry about a story. I asked the nonprofit to use your company for the site work if your bid is competitive." That stopped him. "I am not trying to destroy what you built, Curtis." "Then what do you want?" The question came out louder than he intended. For years, everyone had assumed I wanted either nothing or too much. Nobody had asked plainly. "I want you to tell the story without putting yourself in every part of it." He looked away. "I was there. Yes, I carried Noah. Yes, I stayed with Rosa. Yes, I rebuilt this house. Yes, each answer removed one place he could hide." Then I said, and I went inside. His jaw tightened. "You let people believe it." "I did. You could have corrected me." "I could have." He looked back at me, surprised by the admission. "I kept quiet because Grandma asked me to. Then I kept quiet because correcting 12 years felt harder than surviving them. That part belongs to me." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Curtis said, "If I correct it now, everyone will think I lied." "You did lie." "I did not start it." "No, you only learned when to stop correcting it." That landed. He switched off the truck engine. The silence that followed was the first one between us that did not feel like surrender. 2 weeks later, Chief Briggs amended the Canyon 7 historical record. The department did not hold a ceremony. They replaced one display card in the station and updated the annual memorial program. The new record said Curtis Torres assisted with exterior evacuation and transportation. It said Staff Sergeant Elena Torres, off-duty Army National Guard medic, entered the structure and removed 4 civilians before being critically injured. No adjectives. No hero language. Just positions restored. Curtis removed the old newspaper headline from his company website. He informed the bank the proposed access route was unavailable. The equipment loan was delayed, not canceled. He scaled the expansion down and kept all 6 employees. Noah asked him privately why he had never said my name. Curtis did not tell me what he answered. 3 months later, Torres Excavation submitted the lowest bid for the recovery housing site work. I signed the contract. That was not forgiveness. It was accuracy. Accuracy did not erase the damage. It simply stopped asking the future to keep paying interest on a story that should have ended years earlier. For all involved. 9 months later, smoke returned to the county. Not Canyon 7. A smaller fire east of Bayfield, pushed hard by wind and dry grass. It crossed 2 roads before crews stopped it. 12 homes were lost. No one died. Front Range Recovery called me at 6 in the morning. By noon, the house was ready. The nonprofit had finished 2 guest cabins behind Grandma's garden. Torres Excavation had graded the turnaround, installed drainage, and reinforced the gravel drive for emergency vehicles. Curtis's crew completed the work under budget. He never mentioned that the road could have carried his trucks. I never mentioned that he knew exactly how much strength the soil required. Chief Briggs rehung the burned brass numbers inside the front hall, 418, black at the edges. Below them, the nonprofit placed a small card. This house survived Canyon 7. It now shelters families after disaster. No names, that was right. The first family arrived just before dark in a county van. A mother stepped out holding a plastic folder of insurance papers. 2 children followed with donated backpacks. A brown dog jumped down last, its fur carrying the sour wet smell smoke leaves after water reaches it. They owned what they had been wearing when the evacuation order came. I knew the look on the mother's face. She was counting losses because counting felt more useful than feeling them. "Do we pay anything tonight?" she asked. "No, how long can we stay?" "Until the case manager helps you find the next place." She looked at the house as though kindness might contain a hidden deadline. "What do you need from me?" "Names for the emergency contact sheet. Medication information. That is all tonight." The younger child pointed at the stairs. "Which room is mine?" "Whichever one your brother does not choose first." He ran inside. His brother followed, and for several seconds the house held the sound of children arguing about windows. It was the most ordinary sound I had heard there in years. The mother stood on the porch, still gripping the folder. "I am sorry," she said. "For what?" "I do not know." I did. People apologize when disaster makes them dependent. They think needing a door means they have failed to build one. "You got your children out," I said. "The rest is paperwork." Her shoulders lowered by half an inch. A truck came up the drive. Curtis parked beside the new storage shed. He climbed out with a portable generator strapped in the bed. "They said the backup unit was delayed," he told me. "It was. This one runs clean. I serviced it yesterday." He lowered the tailgate. I helped him guide the generator onto a cart. We worked without discussing the bank, the land, or the amended fire report. At the shed, he checked the fuel valve twice. "You still teach evacuation planning?" he asked. "Yes." "You still tell people not to build one exit?" "Yes." He nodded toward the drive. "Emergency access is better from the north side." "I know. I could draw it for the county." That would help. It was not an apology. It was not nothing. Before leaving, Curtis paused beneath the brass house numbers. He read the card once. Then he said Noah wants to bring his kids next weekend. Show them where the floorboards were. The original floor burned. He knows. Curtis put his hands in his jacket pockets. He says he still counts sometimes. So do I. He looked at me then, not at my scar, not at the house. At me. I should have said your name. Yes, he nodded once and walked back to his truck. I did not call him back. Some repairs need pressure before they hold. Others need time without anyone leaning on them. After sunset, I made one final walk around the property. The cabins had lights in their windows. The dog slept near the kitchen door. Upstairs, the children had chosen rooms and changed their minds twice. I checked the propane tank, the smoke alarms, and the north access gate. Then I returned to the porch. The mother had left the front door open while carrying blankets inside. Warm light stretched across the ramp Curtis had built for Grandma. For 12 years, that doorway had belonged to one argument. Who went in? Who came out? Who stayed? And who got remembered? Now a family with no reason to know our story was using it to begin the next day. I took off my jacket. The scar across my shoulder remained uncovered in the porch light. Nobody stared. Nobody asked for an explanation. The younger child hurried past me carrying a pillow bigger than his chest. "Can we keep the door open?" he asked. "For a minute," I said. So we did. The truth did not make me the owner of every part of that night. It only returned me to my own place in it. No one had to vanish so another person could remain visible. Has someone in your family ever built a reputation on a story that left your part out for years? Share this with someone who has been carrying the missing half of a family story. Because once the whole truth had a place to stand, the house no longer needed a hero.